New Life, Chapter 3, First Part. At midday, the snowstorm started in earnest. As the wildly dancing snow of the blizzard denied even Dee his sight, the hoarse voice groaned. "This ain't good. I bet you can't see 3 feet in front of us." Its languid tones were torn away by the wind. "I'm getting sleepy, too. There'll be trouble if we don't find us someplace to sleep." I slapped on a heat pack. "That little thing doesn't count for squat. It's the temperature outside that'll decide if we live or die." It was most likely already 5 degrees below zero or worse. Dee's form was dissolving into the blizzard, and the snow was now up to his knees. If a normal human didn't find shelter under these conditions, they'd freeze to death inside of 5 minutes. Even for one descended from the ageless and undying nobility, walking was becoming physically impossible, with his speed now less than 10 yards an hour. While pressing on wouldn't be impossible, it would be pointless. Dee surveyed his surroundings. Turning toward the mountainside, he put out his left hand. Immediately, a sleepy voice responded, "Walk along the side of the mountain about 50 yards. There's a cave." He reached it soon enough. The cavern was elliptical, looking to be 20 feet high at its highest point, and over 6.5 at the lowest. Though it was half filled with snow, it was rather deep, and the snow no longer gusted in when he'd ventured 5 yards from the entrance. Before long, the wind would probably change direction. At any rate, this was the best he could do until the blizzard had blown itself out. Dee continued toward the rear. The cavern was quite deep. Though there was no trace of any creatures lurking there, it would be too dangerous not to check anyway. Once he'd been attacked, it would be too late. About 10 yards in, his progress was checked by a rock wall. He pressed the palm of his left hand against it, and the hoarse voice quickly responded, "It's okay. It's the real deal." The hunter turned and was about to go back the way he'd come, but halted. A shadow stretched out before him. Only half as dark as an ordinary shadow, it was that of a Dhampir born of both human and noble lineage. And strangely, there was no light there to cast any shadows. Dee had already slipped into combat mode. His right hand came up naturally, no doubt ready to shoot for the hilt of his longsword in the shortest possible time. Yet 2 seconds passed without any tension or killing lust. Dee turned around. Where the rock wall had been, the cave now continued on, and 5 or 6 yards ahead of the hunter, flames blazed. A campfire. Sap bubbled to the surface of the roughly broken tree branches. There was no one there. The area behind it was blocked by the cavern walls. "Seems we've fallen into a psychological attack." It was unclear what, if anything, Dee made of the hoarse voice's words, for he was emotionless as he approached the little fire. He hadn't needed the hoarse voice to tell him someone had launched a psychological attack. The question was, how had he fallen for it? Whatever lurked in that cave on the snowy mountain, it had gotten the better of Dee's instincts and his superhuman senses. Was this why the place was called White Devil Mountain? He held his left hand out over the flames. They were hot. Slowly, he lowered it again. Though the hoarse voice didn't cry out, the hunter felt the heat all the way to his bones. It seemed to be a real fire. However, his left hand didn't react to it. D put out his left hand again, and at that instant the scene all around him distorted. The howl of an enormous beast shredded the snow and wind, and a gigantic white form filled the cave. The snow that whisked into the air from the thud of the fallen body mixed with fresh vermilion, and it fell like rain on a huge, twitching white carcass. D gave a light shake of his head. He was throwing off the scant vestiges of the illusion beast's glamour. Its titanic maw was still open, with more than 10 feet separating its upper jaw from the lower one. Each of those bore a pair of huge, yard-long molars. The form on the whole resembled the mouth of a hippopotamus. Yet the head and body combined only reached the length of 6.5 feet. D saw several dead branches at the back of its lower jaw. It must have used those branches to convince humans who entered the cave that they were seeing a fire. Because it showed humans in the snowy mountains the first thing they desired, the beast probably also possessed a slight ability to read minds. Snow and wind broadsided the hunter. The whole cave had been an illusion.
That was a close one, eh?
On the snowfield off to the right, a figure swaddled in a winter coat had just gotten up. He identified himself, saying, "It's Cray, remember me?" When he showed the hunter the knife in his right hand, it was wet with fresh blood. Apparently even his thick gloves didn't impede its use. He pulled off his goggles and tugged down his muffler, and sure enough, there was the face of the outlaw. "Did you collapse on the way up here?" D asked. The man's sudden rise from the snow must have garnered his interest. "That's a hell of a way of putting it. I came this far on my own because you told me I was out of luck. Not bad, eh? My coat's got a thermostat, and you can even toss on the hood and use it as a sleeping bag. Hell, you could sleep out in cold like this for 24 hours straight, no problem. It's the latest thing, ordered special from the Eastern Frontier. Speaking of which, you're not wearing a thermal coat, are you? Speaking of which, you're not wearing a winter coat, are you?" Pounding the chest of his own bulky coat, he continued, "It's bad enough that illusion beast pulled you in, but I'm surprised you can even walk in a snowstorm like this without a winter coat, goggles, a muffler, or anything. You guys with noble blood are a breed apart. Are you the one that killed it?" They were alone on the snow-whipped expanse. Nevertheless, a grin rose to Cray's lips at that odd question. Damn straight. Only it wasn't just me. It was them, too. The outlaw gave a toss of his chin to the snowy trail to Dee's rear. Before Dee could turn and look, 3 figures came into view, in a perfect line of small, medium, and large sizes. To be precise, there were actually 4 of them. A tiny figure bundled in a winter coat was strapped to the back of the giant, Dust. That was a close call, Dee. Her mask was pulled down, but Dr. Vera still clutched a rifle. Judging by the size of the sighting mechanism, it was undoubtedly equipped with a digital imaging virtual scope. Just pointed in the right direction and it would deliver an image clear of fog or gusting snow, making a precise sniper shot possible, even when those factors reduced visibility to less than 3 feet. It was unclear whether or not Dee had noticed the bullet hole that had appeared in the head of the illusion beast. "You owe us, Dee." The tall, lithe figure beside the doctor, Lilia, said patronizingly. "It's okay. Think nothing of it." Vera smiled at him. "I'm a doctor, but I was forced to take a life." "Don't sweat it, Doc. Our selfish friend, Mr. Sexy Pants here, brought it on himself. He tried to be cool and go up alone, but he just ended up walking right into an illusion beast's mouth and needing his bacon saved. Sure you haven't forgotten the basics, Dee?" Lilia said, staring daggers at him through her goggles. First part, end.